I said, right, but as is doesn't cover fraud. Being in the car business, as is probably the case in many industries, is difficult if you have any integrity. The companies that don't have issues that are good, it's the ones that deal with the issues properly. But over the years in the car business, it's very difficult to feel good about operating with integrity because I see so many people being so successful at being shady car dealers. And I think that's true of a lot of industries. And there's a number of stories that illustrate that. One of the examples of that, and I won't name names because I never filed a lawsuit, but very prominent, highly regarded Ferrari dealer sold Challenge Stradale to me through a third-party auction. And on this auction, it was listed very specifically as no service records, no paintwork, no damage. And I even questioned them on that because I said, this is coming wholesale from a Ferrari dealer. Surely they must have some service records. And so I called my contact at the auction and said, can you look into this? Can you find out? And he confirmed, nope, there's absolutely no service records. I said, okay, well, that's weird, but whatever. I'll put in an appropriate bid given the lack of service history and assume that I have to do a major service. And, the car probably was serviced. It's just they don't want to release the records or something along those lines. So I bought the car. I noticed a couple small flaws on it when I got it, but nothing glaringly obvious. And about 6 months into this, I had my salesman call the Ferrari dealer that we had purchased it from, that claimed that there was no service history, no paintwork, and pretend to be the new owner of it and see if they would release the service records. Now, it's something that totally violates privacy laws. And, Ferrari is very, very tight on any sort of client information or service history or whatever. You could not do that today. But he found the one secretary that was willing to help him out, and he's a bit of a smooth talker anyway, and got her to immediately fax over all of the service records, of which there were many, very many. And about halfway through these service records was a $40,000 bill for a quote-unquote off-road excursion. And it was the rear wheel and the rear spindle and hub and carbon ceramic brake rotor and rocker panel. And it really wasn't much body damage. It was just a lot of bolt-on parts, but those add up quickly with Ferrari. And I went back to the auction company and said, hey, this is on you guys because, it's here in writing, no paintwork, no damage, no service history, and that is not the case. And they said, well, if you had brought this up, within a couple weeks, we'd happily take the car back, but since so much time has passed, it's really not our concern. I said, okay, well, it's sucky, but kind of a valid point. So I called the general manager of Ferrari dealer and tried to go up the chain and all that. And they essentially said, well, you're a car dealer, so it's as is. I said, right, but as is doesn't cover fraud. It's one thing to complain because the car broke as I was leaving. That's as is. But when you guys, put Marvel Mystery Oil in the engine and that's why it broke when I was leaving, that is not covered by as is. That's fraud. And I have the documentation right here that says that you guys covered up and willfully misled me. And they basically just said, you know what? Sue us. They just didn't care. They were fat and happy. They were making a crap ton of money and they weren't concerned with me. And I did look into suing them. I didn't end up doing it, mostly because my attorney at the time just kind of dropped the ball. He never, I said, let's go, let's do this. This should be an open and shut case. They have tons of money. Never materialized. So they made their money. It cost me, I think, $40,000 in diminished value because it took that long to sell the car. And once I knew about the damage, I had to, discount the car even more. A big time Ferrari dealer with a big time Ferrari Challenge racing team, made their money on the car and screwed me, the little guy. Exhibit number 2. Me and my boy John Sabo went out to this farm in the middle of Newton Falls, Ohio, to buy a 1969 911T Sportomatic. That was the first like clutchless manual automatic conglomeration of weird transmissions that Porsche tried. It was a super weird thing because you shift it like a stick, but there's no clutch pedal. But when you grab the shifter, it essentially engages the clutch type apparatus so that you can then shift it. It's a very weird sensation. Anyway, we go out to this farm, probably the most unlikely place that you'd expect to find a vintage air-cooled Porsche. It was definitely, old school redneck Midwestern farmer, but he had a bunch of garages and a bunch of weird memorabilia, and he had this 911T Sportomatic that had a ducktail on it and aftermarket wheels, and I think it was a Targa as well, and it was a little bit of a Frankenstein. He had a Mercedes 450 SL as well that had gold wire wheels with the knockoff caps and side pipes, and he had some odd taste. Some real Frankenstein hot rod German cars. So we made a deal on the 911T and got it back and serviced it and did a little bit of paint work. And I think we took the ducktail off and tried to put it back more to original spec, although it wasn't totally original. The biggest thing about the car was that it wasn't the original motor, and we knew that. And when we put it up for sale, we advertised it as such. This is a non-matching numbers car, and of course everybody wants matching numbers. Although on a 911T Sportomatic, who really cares, because they're not collectible anyway. But that was the question people kept asking. I'm like, the car's like 35 grand. Who cares? Like, just buy it and drive it. But we had this buyer that was interested from overseas. He was very concerned about the non-matching numbers, and he kept asking us and kept trying to buy it, kept coming back around. I'm interested in the car, but I really only want to give you like 28 grand because it's non-matching numbers. I said, I can't do that. Like, we bought the car right, but I know it's still worth 30 something, and I'm going to hold out for that. So as much as he really wanted the car, he couldn't get over that it was non-matching numbers. So we ended up selling it to a dealer in Colorado, and the dealer claimed that he was buying it for his personal car, heard that one a million times before, and was very nice and gave us what we wanted. I think we settled on like 34 grand, shipped it out to him, and I didn't think any more of it. I try not to pay attention to cars after they're sold too much because I don't want to find out that somebody's asking a bunch more money and then feel bad about what I got. I was happy with the deal. A couple weeks later, I get a call from this same customer overseas, and he goes, "Hey, so are you sure that car wasn't matching numbers?" I was like, yeah, like, we got the certificate of authenticity. It was a different motor number. Like, that is not the original motor. And I think it was a hot rod motor too. It was hopped up on performance, but again, not original. He goes, well, because the guy in Colorado put it up on eBay and he claimed it was matching numbers, and I bought it from him for 40 grand because he said it was matching numbers. I'm like, why? Why would you think after 5 conversations with me that I proved it wasn't matching numbers, that just because this guy said it was matching numbers, that all of a sudden you believe him? So he ended up paying 10 grand more than he offered me, just because some shisty dealer told him that it was matching numbers, even though he knew that it wasn't, and then called me to essentially cry in his milk, and not only I made him feel bad, but he made me feel bad, because I'm like, man, now thanks. Like, I left 10 grand on the table because I didn't lie to you, and somebody else lied to you and made a bunch of money off of you. Exhibit number 3, 2009-ish Corvette ZR1. Bought it from a dealer with whom I had a good relationship. It was a good client of his, super nice car, and I wholesaled it to another dealer in the Midwest. And I hadn't seen the car. I was going off of my contact's word, who I trusted. The owner claimed that it was a perfect car, all original, all that. Showed up to the dealer. The dealer called me and said, hey, the front bumper's been painted. I was like, okay, well, I wasn't aware of that. He goes, well, yeah, there's a receipt in the glove box. I was like, well, that was real smart of the owner to lie about paintwork and then leave the receipt in the glove box. But I'm like, okay, fine, front bumper. Like, that's not that big of a deal. That happens all the time, sometimes for rock chips. And he goes, well, it's awful. Like, it's all misaligned. It doesn't match and all that. And he sent me pictures. And I said, I'm not seeing what you're seeing, but okay, fine. This is on me because you have a receipt for it and I didn't disclose it because I didn't know it. So what do I need to do to make it right? It's like $800-900 probably to paint the front bumper. And he says, well, I'm going to get an estimate. I'm not necessarily going to pay for the estimate. Let's just figure out what the number is. And I didn't hear from him for a couple of weeks. He sends me this estimate that includes repainting the entire front end of the car, replacing the headlights, replacing the bumper, I think, and like blending into the doors. And it was a multi-$1,000 estimate. And I said, dude, you are out of your mind. Like, it's a front bumper. There's a visual break there. You're not going to repaint the car and devalue the car because you need to respray a front bumper. He just went off and started playing the lawyer up card. He said, well, I'm just going to go get it fixed. And I basically said, I'm not authorizing this invoice. Like, no. Like, you do whatever you want, but I'm not authorizing this. Essentially, my guess was that he was, number one, he was in cahoots with the body shop, because no rational body shop would write that kind of an estimate for a front bumper repaint. And number two, his attorney had no idea that these conversations were happening, even though he kept referencing his attorney and his attorney's opinion, because any reasonable attorney worth their salt would say, you have absolutely no case here, and you can't sue somebody over $3,000 or $4,000 because the retainer is going to cost you more than that. So it is not worth it. So he was just crying and threatening and all that in order to get something out of me. So long story short, we ended up settling for, I think, $1,200 because I just wanted to get him off my back. And I knew that somebody who was this irrational, if I told him to go pound sand, would probably take it to the internet and have his cronies try to like destroy my reputation on the internet and all that. I wasn't willing to fight that battle, which is unfortunately how most bullies get their way, especially in business, as they realize that, it's not worth the fight for the other party, and so they'll just settle, and that's what I did. Exhibit number 4, Ferrari 355 Spider. Anybody that knows anything about Ferrari 355s is that you almost guaranteed have to get a compression and leak down test before you buy one of those. The early cars had valve guide issues, and even the ones that were fixed, it seems like those cars just have top end engine issues, because I've seen a lot of cars with bad compression and leak down. So I got offered a beautiful blue Ferrari 355 Spider a little while back from a private owner through a broker. And I said, okay, well, I'm interested in the car. Here's my offer, but I need a compression and leak down test. And the test came back and there was like 3 dead cylinders. The compression numbers were the same as the leak down percentages, if that tells you how bad it was. Like, there was like 40-60% leak down on a couple cylinders and sub 100 PSI compression. It was bad. So I said, okay, well, my offer's, $15,000 less now, or whatever it takes to rebuild the engine. And we were a couple grand apart, and I thought, man, this is actually great. I'm going to get this gorgeous 355 Spider, and we'll have it done right, and it'll be a fresh engine, and this might actually be a pretty profitable deal. I think we were $1,000 apart from getting it, and the guy went totally silent. He sold it out from under me to somebody else who paid more money. And about a month later, I got offered the car from a dealer friend of mine who had bought it. He said, what do you think of this car? I said, And I just sent him back the screenshot of the compression and leak down numbers. He's like, oh no, this car drives great. It feels, pulls strong and all that. I was like, okay, well, your butt dyno needs calibration, because it obviously has some issues. But I asked him what he paid for it. I think he paid like $10,000 more than I had offered, and he knew nothing about it. So it's not only dealers that lie, but this private owner just conveniently forgot about the compression and leak down numbers and found a different buyer who wasn't willing to do their due diligence and got a bunch more money for it. And that's not the first time a private party has done that either. I flew out to an Exhibit 5 to Connecticut to inspect a 996 GT3, a white one. And I got in and met the car at the shop where it was being serviced and took it for a test drive. And everything felt pretty good, but there was this noise from the rear end. And I initially thought it was brakes. It was just a very subtle grinding noise. But when I hit the brakes, it didn't go away, so it wasn't that. But when I put the clutch in, the noise went away. So I said, okay, well, this isn't good. This is a drivetrain noise. So I took the tech for a ride with me and said, hey, do you hear this? And he said, yeah, I do. It's transmission fork bushing, something or other. But it was a part of the transmission. And he said, that's a very early sign of that going bad, but that is definitely what you're hearing. And he said, that is a full transmission teardown. That's a $5,000-$7,000 repair. So went back to the owner, tried to renegotiate. We were a little bit apart. He was not super happy about that because he obviously wasn't aware of it. But I said, well, this is the issue. It's there. Your tech confirmed it, and we both rode in the car together. Again, ended up, he just ghosted me. And a couple weeks later, I see the car up for sale at another dealership. No mention of the issue, asking, 15 grand more than I thought it was worth given the issue, and of course probably just passed the issue down the road, and somebody unknowingly bought it and had to do a transmission repair, and the dealer made their money, and the owner got another 7 or 8 grand because he found a dealer that wasn't willing to check on it, and he didn't disclose the issue that we had come up with. But for all of these sob stories, there was one time where somebody else lying and me being honest ended up netting me a whole bunch more money. So I bought a Ferrari 328, really nice car from a wholesaler. And this was back in the day. I think I bought it for like 35 grand. Those were the days. And I got it in. Dealer that I do a lot of business with wanted the car. So I cut him a deal. I think I sold it to him for like 38 grand, 39 grand. Quick wholesale deal, no big deal. And shipped it right to him. And he got the car and he called me. He said, man, the whole car's been painted, or the whole back end of the car has been painted. I said, no, there's no way. That car was really nice. He said, no, the whole back end of the car has been painted. I said, okay, well, fine. I sold it to you for 38 grand. Like, you really can't complain, but since you are complaining, I'll send a truck, I'll send your money back. No harm, no foul. Happy to take the car back. I'll sell it to somebody else because I thought the car was nice. So we shipped the car back, and once we got the car back, we went over the whole car with the paint meter. Now, paint gauge is not a perfect indication of whether or not a car's been painted, but it's usually a pretty good indication. And the body panels were dead even, factory thickness across the board. Me and a couple other guys all looked at it, searching for paintwork. We're like, there's no way. This car is totally original paint. I think the guy just got cold feet and wanted to return the car. So I said, all right, well, he's the idiot. We got the car back, and it didn't take us long, and we ended up retailing the car for another 10 grand more than I had wholesaled it to him for. So the liar got screwed, and I finally got my due and made a whole bunch more money because we operated with integrity. We're willing to stand behind a car that we didn't think had issues and didn't, and ended up selling it to somebody else for a whole bunch more money. Sold that guy 2 cars and ended up actually getting them both back in on trade and sold them again, and ended up with a great relationship with a retail customer as a result.
Who wants a free carbon fiber ring? Well, right now, Patrick Adair Designs is giving away a free carbon fiber ring with any purchase if you use the code VINwikicF at checkout on their website. You can find them at the link in the description below. You can also follow along on Patrick Adair's YouTube channel. You've seen him here telling car stories, but over there, he documents his journey in entrepreneurism and some of the amazing things they do to create rings out of the most interesting materials from Earth and from space. So check them out now and thank them for their support of VINwiki.